This podcast is powered by Pelotonia. To learn more about our goaltend cancer, visit pelotonia.org or see the link in the show notes.
She was there in her bed, just being as she would for her whole life, was being the strongest person in the room.
Welcome to One Goal, a storytelling podcast from Pelotonia. We're a passionate community dedicated to funding innovative cancer research. I'm your host and Chief Operating Officer of Pelotonia, Joe Apgar. Your journey with us to the finish line begins now. Pelotonia is powered by an unstoppable community, and it's through research we will see an end to cancer. We want to thank our major funding partners for making all of this possible: the American Electric Power Foundation, Huntington, the L Brands Foundation, and Peggy and Richard Santulli. Kind, optimistic, passionate, strong, unyielding. These are just some of the words people have used to describe Halle Temple. The Pelotonia community first came to know Halle during her 2017 internship in our marketing department. Though Halle was small in stature, her enthusiasm and energy was larger than life, and she immediately jumped into her work, eager to help in any way she could. One vivid memory of our staff member, Janelle, was when they asked Halle the question, "In what way do you relate to a bike?" Her response was, "I think I relate to the wheels of a bike. Just like the wheels, once you get me going, you may have to slam on the brakes to get me to stop." And it was true. Halle never let anything slow her down, including Ewing's sarcoma. Halle was never afraid to tell others her story, how she was a childhood cancer survivor, how she loved to write and was passionate about her faith, as well as a good cup of coffee. She spoke about all of these things with a unique positivity and zest for life. Throughout her journey, she didn't waver in her character and resolve. Though her soft demeanor might lead you to believe otherwise, Halle was a fierce advocate for herself and for other young adults facing cancer. Through Halle, the community also came to know Alec Temple. Halle and Alec married in June of 2019, and just a couple months later, he rode in his first Pelotonia in honor of his wife. Much like his wife, Alec too has a passion for seeing an end to cancer. In the spring of 2020, Halle Temple passed away. But her legacy will continue to live on in many ways, including a new foundation called Share Your Story. And her story will continue to be told in different ways, including this podcast where we sat down with Alec. We start this episode titled "The Strongest Person in the Room" with the day that Alec and Halle first met during their freshman year of college.
I mean, if you knew Halle, you knew what she looked like. It was it was hard to not see that there was something different from her right away. The cancer treatments that she had early on really affected her left shoulder, and her left arm were a little smaller. It had quite a sizable scar, almost the full size of her bicep area, because they had to replace her. Whatever bone that is. I'm not
the
doctor,
bone from the elbow to the shoulder.
Yeah, elbow to shoulder. They'd replace that with her tibia in her leg, so she didn't have the tibia in her right leg. We met. We lived on the same floor. We were in the same program at Ashland our freshman year. Back in 2014. And it was one day I was doing laundry. Our laundry room had a large table in there and was kind of a nice place that if you wanted to do a little bit of studying, but at the same time you still wanted to kind of like be social, it was a cool place to go. And Halle was in there when I was doing laundry. We were just kind of talking, just kind of, making small talk, trying to make friends, stuff like that. And at one point I was just like, well, I hope this isn't offensive, but I do, I got to ask, what happened with your arm and that scar? And she was like, no, I'm not offended at all. I'm glad that you brought it up. And she kind of went into her whole story about how she had Ewing's sarcoma, how that had affected her from literally her 6th birthday up until she was about 14, which I believe is when the last of her surgeries and different procedures and stuff that she had to do as a result of that was over. And she, explained a little bit of the story to me and said that she loves the opportunity. She loves when people asked her about her scar and about her arm, because it gave her an opportunity to show, as she said, how God had brought her through all that and showed her and gave her an opportunity to kind of witness to different people about what she had gone through, and how, trials can be difficult, but when you have the right mindset and when you have an attitude of perseverance, that you can get through it and you can be stronger. And you just know that as soon as you start talking to her, attitude and her spirit and her character just sticks with you. It's just latches onto you and doesn't let go. And it was an incredible story, and we became friends, and not too much later after that became a little bit more than friends.
Anyone that's ever had the opportunity to meet her optimism and just joy for life shines through in the first 5 seconds of talking to her, and I can only imagine what that was like, sort of meeting her for the first time.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that smile was enough. Just the joy that her smile, and then what it did to, how it lit up her face was enough. She wasn't a large person in any, very small stature. And I just found it so shocking and yet so inspiring that such a small statured person had she just had such a big presence. As soon as she started talking about her story, she just had this aura of strength, like she said, perseverance and stuff like that. It was just it caught me off guard, but it was so attractive.
Is there a story that sticks out to you that is just like pure Halle?
The one that always makes me laugh when I think about it, kind of near Ashland, there's a state park, Mohican State Park in Loudonville. And she was a little outdoorsy. She grew up in a small town. I grew up in a small town. We decided we were going to go hiking one summer day. It was a great day. And there was at one point where we're kind of going up a couple of the hills, and we had to come back down to get back to our car. And the path just disappeared. It was completely gone. We were like, all right, cool. We could see the path. It was maybe a quarter mile down this super steep hill. And I was like, all right, cool. Well, I'll go first and I'll figure the way down it. And so I'm taking my time and being slow. And I'm going from tree to tree and rock and just using it as a point of just trying to zigzag down the hill. And I get down to the path. I'm like, cool, Halle, if you just follow that path or something similar to that, then, you'll probably be good and stuff. And I didn't hear what she said. I don't know what was going through her head, but she just went straight down the hill, full speed, little steps, just I don't know how she stayed upright. I thought she was going to roll. And then at the last second, she just turned her body so that way, I was prepared to catch her. I'm like, all right, here we go. And she just face first right into my chest, catch her as she slid between my legs to make sure she didn't go further down the hill. That was just kind of Halle in a nutshell of not necessarily that she was that she charged into things without thinking. But as soon as I said, hey, if you just follow the path that I did, you'll probably be okay. And she was like, nope, I'm going to do my own thing. And, in that instance, it didn't work out too well for her.
Yeah.
But yeah.
It's a good metaphor for life. So one of the stories I remember from when she interned was, she did a project where she sorted through just tons of profiles of all these participants and started pulling out the cancer survivors and collecting their stories and interviewing them for blogs and we were using for social media and stories. And I'll never forget the passion she had behind finding and seeing other young survivors that were riding, that were part of Pelotonia, and I've heard it from a lot of other people too. It's when you're a pediatric or a young adult cancer survivor, you've gone through this experience, it can be pretty lonely. You don't have the chance to meet a ton of other people like you. And I'll never forget just her excitement around seeing that, there's a lot of young survivors and a lot of people that in a way shared her story of survivorship and advocacy. And so it was a really great summer to have her in our office, and we had a phenomenal ride in 2017, one of the best rides we've ever had. And she was a big part of that. So we're always grateful that she had the opportunity to experience that. So take us through sort of your senior year and graduating and ultimately sort of relocating and what happened.
Our senior year was interesting for a myriad of different reasons. We had a couple of incidences where, looking back now, we could have jumped on all this a little sooner. We did a little bit, but on New Year's Eve, I guess going to be 2017, going into 2018, she had all these really bad spasms where she was essentially bedridden for a whole day. She wasn't able to move pretty much all without just intense pain in through her lower back, which ended with us going to urgent care, getting some muscle relaxers, and she was doing better after a couple of days. Something similar to that happened the week before Valentine's Day. That's actually 3 days before I was planning on proposing to her.
And did you do it on your original plan?
Yeah.
You did? Yeah. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Well, how was that? Like, what was describe the proposal? And
I did put a lot of work into it, not necessarily into specifically the night, but in a lot of things surrounding it. So Halle, she could be a little bit more of a worrier sometimes. And there were a lot of couples around us that were actually breaking up. And so she was super nervous. She was super worried the whole time. Like, oh no, she was worried I was going to break up with her, all this different stuff. Well, literally at the same time, I was talking with her roommate, with her mom, with her cousin, all these different people. We're actually sitting at dinner, and she's like, I was in the shower earlier getting ready for this. And I was thinking, like, is tonight the night? Is he going to propose tonight? No, he's not going to. I don't need to paint my nails or anything. It's not going to happen tonight. She said this.
She said that
me.
Out loud?
She audibly said that to me as in my coat over the table, the ring box is sitting in there getting ready for the proposal. And
you're probably nervous at this point because at least I was petrified when I was going to propose.
Yeah, it just I was, I'm just trying to act. I'm just in my brain. I'm like, how do I act normal? Because I know that I'm not acting normal. I'm probably acting weird, and I don't want to tip her off and all this different stuff. And luckily, right after she said that, she got up, went to the bathroom quick, and it gave me a second to just breathe and just be like, yes, the plan is working. And so then we went back to school, and we took just a short walk. It had to be short because she was wearing a dress, and it was February, so it's freezing cold outside. And we stopped this one place that was a little bit more meaningful to us on campus, and her roommate Morgan actually got set up. And after I saw her get set up, and I have no idea how Halle didn't see Morgan on the other side of the road getting ready to take pictures, that's when I had proposed to her right there. Throughout the next couple of months, she would have a little bit of pain here and there, but nothing too bad. And then after we graduated in May, I moved to Columbus right away. I had a job lined up. So I had a week essentially where I got all my stuff from school to my home back in Wapakoneta, and then moved down to Columbus and started, what I thought was going to be, our lives together down there in Columbus. And she was working on finding a job. And, it got worse and it got worse, and she was having pain through her left leg. And then one day she fell. The pain was so bad that she fell. They rushed her to the emergency room to see what was going on. And of course, small town emergency room was like, well, these x-rays don't look very good. We got to get you to a bigger hospital. I don't remember how they got her up to the Cleveland Clinic, and pretty much told her that the cancer had returned. And the day that I got the phone call was like 2 a.m. on the morning of June 1st, 2018.
Okay. And so you had just moved to Columbus. You were in an apartment, I assume, or a house. And 2 a.m. you get a call.
I was about 3 weeks, I think. I was in Columbus, and I knew she was rushing to the hospital. Her parents had said, don't come up yet because we're moving a lot still. So I was essentially just kind of, waiting. One of the least productive days of work I've ever had. Just kind of sitting at home. And then her parents had left that night to just go get, I think that they essentially just sent him to a hotel to go get some sleep, and a couple of her cousins were with her. And when her cousin Hannah, who is currently a nurse up in Canton, when her name was the one that came across my phone, I knew it wasn't good news.
You both went really most of your final semester of school engaged, writing your theses, looking for jobs. You moved. And then here you are a month after graduation. She's in the hospital in Cleveland Clinic, post-surgery, and you're in Columbus, sort of on the other end of a phone, just learning sort of devastating news. And
I genuinely had no idea what to do that day. It's 2 a.m. I laid there and just kind of existed. Didn't even have the energy, the willpower to even to cry. Just kind of existed in a bed for a few hours. I fell asleep somehow, and I, was scheduled to work that morning. And I don't know why I didn't think I had to call my manager to say, hey, I'm not coming in because I have this thing. I just went into work. I just, my body became like a robot. Get in the car, and probably the fastest I've ever driven in my life from, Upper Arlington all the way up to the Cleveland Clinic. And then when I get there, her dad was the one to come down to greet me. I walked in. Her family was completely surrounding her in the ICU room. And the only dry face in that room was hers. Everybody else, obviously, in that situation, you knew they were upset. But she was there in her bed, just being as she would for her whole life, was being the strongest person in the room. When everybody left was when she finally was able to pull that wall down and we could be real with each other. As soon as people were back in, it was tears off of her face. What do we need to do, doctor? It was just an unyielding perseverance.
So you're at the Cleveland Clinic. It's June 2018. Take us through sort of what happens next, what happens through, the rest of the year and sort of into 2019. Because I imagine through this process, you're also thinking about a wedding.
It was a blur, honestly. So we're at the Cleveland Clinic, and luckily that's when Pelotonia came in. And, Doug made... Essentially, Halle just reached out to Doug, or I think Julie did. Somebody reached out to Doug and said, hey, this is what's going on. Is there anything that you guys can do to help? And within a week of that phone call, Doug had connected her to Dr. Roberts at Nationwide Children's, who was specifically somebody who focused in sarcoma and sarcoma relapses. Dr. Roberts called them within 2 days. They talked through everything, answered every question. And within that week, she was transferred down to Nationwide Children's. And the level of care they took with Halle, being someone who was pretty much bedridden. She had mobility in her feet, and that was about it. In 2 months, she was able to pretty much walk again. She was almost running and jumping again. You could see that Dr. Roberts wanted to take care of her like he would his own kids. She was declared cancer-free in May of 2019. And we had, a month of, out of the pan into the fire. We went from cancer treatments and relearning how to walk to planning a wedding.
Yeah.
At least, that's what I thought. And then as soon as we flipped over to planning a wedding, I realized that Halle was, and just truly astounding overachiever that she was. And I mean that in the best way possible, because she was planning a wedding. She was working as a freelancer, and she was fighting cancer and relearning how to walk all at the same time. The wedding plan was almost done in May. She was just like, "Nah, this is like the 3 things we need to do." It just was completely astounding. We got married in June 19th, 2019.
Can you take us through sort of the moments and remembering when you first saw her, maybe during, if you guys did a first look, or if the first time you saw her was walking down the aisle?
Halle looked great, obviously. I guess I don't have the traditional thing. I wasn't crying or anything like that. I have no idea what my face looked like, because I just shut down for a sec. I was like, all right, I guess it's happening. Here we are. We are actually getting married. And I attribute that so much to the fact that, in the back of your mind, when you're going through all these different things, all these different treatments and stuff, I guess I didn't even know if this was going to be a possibility. And, I included that in my vows about how excited and how blessed I felt, because, a little over a year before that, I didn't think that this was going to be a possibility. And she was on a maintenance medication. That maintenance medication had a couple side effects. And then ultimately, we found in October of 2019 that she had her second relapse. Found out that she had a fracture in her lower spine because of some of the cancer that had been removed previously. And so we had emergency surgery on that. It was actually around Valentine's Day, where she had 2 rods placed in her spine to stabilize her back. And then after that,
Valentine's Day of 2020.
Yes, yeah. And so we were there, and then she was, sent home, and getting ready to restart the potential for the clinical trial, because you have to wait a few weeks after any surgery before you can be on any chemotherapy medication. And then decided to go with a different trial in Columbus, and that was working well for a while, until Halle was having a lot of pain in her right hip area again, and found out that at some point, due to some either it was coming back from some surgery too quickly, or some treatment for a mass that was growing in her hip, she had actually completely fractured the ball joint and her femur in her hip. It was completely cut in half.
Wow.
And as a testament to Halle's strength, she had been walking on it for 2 weeks.
Wow.
So at one point, we got in touch with Roberts. We did some x-rays. She was in the hospital and, off of the clinical trial. And in the couple of weeks that she was off of the clinical trial, that's when the cancer started to spread a little bit more aggressively. The sarcoma spread to her lungs, made it difficult for her to breathe. And after that, transitioned to home care, where she lived at our home, at our apartment, until she passed away on May 15th of 2020.
What was her attitude like during all of that? Like, what were things that she would say, or like, what was she feeling like during all of that?
It wears down on you. After you fight especially like that, you fight something so aggressive for so long, it's hard to not get worn down. But she always remained positive. She always remained optimistic that we could beat this, that that there was worthwhile to fight. And she always felt that, just because we changed plans doesn't mean that we weren't on the wrong one. It just maybe means that the right one wasn't the one that we had thought, or the right one wasn't continuing on the path that we were already at. I don't know how she did it.
You're in your early 20s. You're, relatively recent college graduate. You two were married, and you have gone through this whole sort of second and third and final relapses together with her. And, you weren't there for part one, sort of the pediatric and the 8 years sort of prior to meeting, but you were there every step of the way from the day you met her. How do you think it shaped you? Like when you look back on the experience, and you're still going through the experience, like, do you think it changed you or changed the way you view the world? I'm curious if you were mad, it sort of through your grieving process, if you were angry. I'm curious what your perspective on this whole thing was, because you had to really be strong for her through this whole process. And, but what about you?
There, nights days I would come home from working, 9 to 10 hours, and come home, and Halle loved cooking. That was one of her absolute favorite things to do. So I was blessed most of the time that I would be able to come home and there'd be, this beautiful meal that I could never produce with my hands on the table. But there are many nights when that didn't happen, and Halle would look at me with her sad eyes and just say, Alec, I just couldn't do it. I just wasn't able to get it done. And so you shed off your workload, and you immediately jump into another one. There's a lot of times, and I don't know if she knew about the amount of nights that I would stay up until 1 a.m, making sure the kitchen was clean for her, that the living room was picked up for her, that all these things to make her life even just a little bit better, to when she woke up and she went out to her workspace, that it was ready to go for her, for whatever energy level she was at, just to make sure that I could create the best space for her. I didn't do a good job of having people to talk to about it. And you need to be able to get that out. And it doesn't have to be somebody that understands your struggle. It can just be somebody that can listen.
You performed your own marathon this summer, sort of in honor of Halle. And how'd you choose to do that? What did that mean to you to be able to, you raised a lot of money in support of Pelotonia and cancer research, and really rallied a group of people, your support network to support you in doing that. How did you end up running 26.2 miles?
One step at a time. So I had decided in 2019, it was November 2019, that I wanted to run a marathon. And so after she had passed, it's really easy in that situation when you're by yourself to get in your thoughts. And I decided, I'd already said that I was going to do this. I was going to do the Nationwide Children's one, in honor, of course, of the, like I said earlier, the excellent people that had supported us through all of this. And so I figured I'm still going to do this. It was a wall that I saw in the future that I could climb over. And it was a designated period of time for me that I could have to grieve, that I could work through the feelings, the emotions, the thoughts that I had after all of this. And so, every day for, the 4 months that I did it, I got home, got after work, suited up, and went out and ran, a couple miles and got myself ready. And I was glad that other people decided to run in the marathon, since I had to put it together myself, and had a couple friends, a couple family members that ran portions of it with me, and was able to, do that goal that Halle had cheered me on so much for. And, as almost a way of trying to live in some type of physical, the word's escaping me right now, but to put myself in almost the physical situation that she would be in that constant state of exhaustion, honestly.
I know Halle had just a lot of hopes and dreams and things she wanted to do. And you are still close with her family. And what are you and her family thinking about doing or pursuing to really honor her legacy?
First and foremost, I'm honestly never going to not have plans on the first weekend of August. The biggest thing for me is that, this is Pelotonia was such a big thing for her. It was such an amazing community. It was a community that alongside our friends, family, and our church community that really kind of supported us up. Pelotonia was a community that walked the walk so much with us. I will never not be supporting Pelotonia. I even have a tattoo, Pelotonia, on my arm.
Oh,
the arrow
wow.
forever.
That's amazing.
I've decided this year I hate my body still, so I'm going to ride the 100. But then the biggest thing that we're currently working on, and actually almost, I would say almost ready to announce, but I guess I'm announcing it now. We have a foundation called Share Your Story. We are in the midst of filing and getting everything ready to go on the logistical side. But our goal as a foundation here is to help meet the practical needs of those families and those patients that are being affected by cancer. One of the big things for her, she had always wanted to help develop a pajama line for cancer patients, so that way they didn't have to wear those terrible gowns and basically expose themselves every time they had to get treatments. One of the other areas that we're really looking to do is we want to acquire homes near the James and near Nationwide Children's that we can provide housing for people who are coming in from, whether they're in our own state, whether they're in our country or outside of the country, wherever they're coming from, so that way they can have a place that feels more like home. That's where we're starting. And obviously we're keeping it broad. We want to be able to meet practical needs for cancer patients, however they arise.
She will always be a member of the Pelotonia community. We miss her dearly, as I know you do. Thank you for just letting us into that and sharing a snippet of yours and Halle's story. And I think there's going to be people that hear this that it gives them comfort, and it changes how they view the world and circumstances. And I think that's pretty special.
Yeah, that was it was a really big thing for Halle throughout her journey. She knew that the only way her story that she felt, especially at the time that we had met, that she felt that she had been blessed with the ability to share, the only way that story actually helped anybody was by sharing it, was by getting it out, and letting those people who she may never know hear it, read it, and see how she responded, and see how she made it through it. She always wanted her story told as a story of healing, as a story of perseverance. She had a blog she wrote called Live Your Story. I would highly recommend anybody going through something similar to what you've heard today to read that, and to see how she saw the situation that she was put in. So in memory of her, largely the reason we decided to move with the name Share Your Story, because my story, Halle's family story, Halle's story. It doesn't do anything if we don't share it.
As Alec mentioned in this episode, Halle kept a blog called Live Your Story, where she detailed her experiences. One entry says, "Without my diagnosis, I would not understand what life with cancer is like and why it is so important to find a cure. It might not be today, this week, or even this year, but I believe that the work Pelotonia is doing will help to find a cure. My goal is to work as hard as possible and contribute all I can to Pelotonia, to ensure that one day there will not be a 6-year-old girl sitting in the hospital waiting for her chemotherapy treatment." Halle's impact continues to inspire and motivate us toward that goal. Thank you to Alec for taking the time to beautifully tell Halle's story. We also want to thank our major funding partners, the American Electric Power Foundation, Huntington, the L. Brands Foundation, and Peggy and Richard Santulli. On the next episode of One Goal, we're going to get to know the incredibly motivating story behind one familiar member of our community. Subscribe today to get the episode the moment it is available. This has been One Goal, a storytelling podcast from Pelotonia. I'm your host, cancer survivor and COO of Pelotonia, Joe Apgar. Interview and production scheduling by our marketing and communications duo, Emily Smith and Gabby Blauer. One Goal is carefully crafted and produced at the studios of Wessler Media by Vince Tornero. Mastering by Joey Gerwin at Orange Studio. Special thank you to all of our guests for being willing to share their inspiring journeys for this podcast. Also, please rate, review, and subscribe so you can get seasons 1 and 2, as well as future episodes. If you want to learn more about the Pelotonia community and how you can make an impact on cancer research, see the link in the show notes or visit pelotonia.org. That's pelotonia.org.